Have you ever stopped to think about how the very first cities came to be? I mean, really think about it. Thousands of years ago, in a part of the world called Sumer, in Mesopotamia, people did something that was absolutely revolutionary. They went from living in scattered little farming villages to building massive organized cities. They basically wrote the blueprint for how we all live today. But it was anything but easy, which brings up a huge question.
Right? How on earth do you do that? It sounds kind of impossible. You're in a dry, harsh land, and you're going to build a city? But the people of Sumer, well, they were incredible problem solvers, and the solutions they came up with would literally change the world forever.
So let's meet these folks. They were, in every sense of the word, the world's first urban pioneers. They're the ones who figured out how to leave behind a life of scattered farming and create a totally new way of living, all together in one massive organized place. This was a gigantic leap for humanity.
Okay, so problem number one was huge. The environment itself. Sumer was super dry. There was nowhere near enough rain to grow the amount of food you'd need to feed thousands of people. So what do? How do you solve that?
Well, the answer was some truly brilliant engineering. They looked at the two giant rivers nearby, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and they dug these massive canals to bring that river water right to their fields. Then they built huge basins, kind of like reservoirs, to store all that water for the hot, dry seasons. This system worked so well that they could grow a surplus of food, way more than they actually needed just to survive.
So with plenty of food, guess what happens? The population explodes. And that success creates a whole new set of problems. I mean, when you have thousands of people living side by side, how do you keep things from getting chaotic? How do you create order and manage it all? Yeah, the challenge was figuring out how to go from the simple rules of a small village to the complex order needed for a city. They needed ways to protect themselves, they needed laws, and they needed some kind of shared purpose to hold it all together. And their solution was to literally build the order right into the city itself. They built these gigantic mud brick walls for protection, sometimes miles long. They organized their entire city around a central temple. They created marketplaces that weren't just for trade, they were the social heart of the city. Everything had its place. And speaking of that central temple, at the very heart of every Sumerian city was this, the ziggurat. This thing was incredible. It was a massive, stepped pyramid, and they believed that their city's most important god lived right at the very top. So it was the religious center, for sure, but it was also a symbol of the city's power and its wealth. It was a big deal. You know, as the cities got more complex, their leadership had to change too. In the beginning, priests were the leaders. That makes sense, right? They were in charge of the relationship with the gods, and they managed the food stores. But as cities got richer, they started fighting with each other over land and water. And that's when a new type of leader stepped up, the warrior king, a powerful general who could lead an army and protect the city walls. Now, to make this whole society run smoothly, everyone needed to know their role. So a really clear social structure, kind of like a pyramid, developed. At the very top, you had your kings and priests. Below them were the merchants, government officials, and scribes. Then came the craftspeople, the potters and weavers. After them was the biggest group by far, the farmers and fishers who did most of the work. And right at the bottom were enslaved people. This structure was their way of making sure every single job got done. Okay, so you've got food, you've got order. But managing a big city creates even more new problems. How do you keep track of all that grain? How do you build bigger, stronger buildings? Well, the Sumerians answered with some inventions that were absolute game changers. And it's really important to get this. These inventions weren't just random brilliant ideas that popped into someone's head. Nope, they were necessary solutions to very real problems. They needed better ways to handle trade, construction, and government. They invented out of necessity. And maybe the most important solution of them all was this one, cuneiform. This was the world's very first system of writing. Scribes would take a sharpened reed and press these little wedge-shaped marks into wet clay tablets. And, believe it or not, it started out as just a way to do accounting, a way to keep track of sheep or jars of grain. But wow, did it quickly become so much more. Once they had writing, they could record their laws, they could write down government decisions, they could pass along their greatest stories and their history. For the first time ever, knowledge could be saved perfectly for the next generation. This invention, this is literally the beginning of recorded history as we know it.
All right, now for another mind-blowing innovation. I want you to just look at this number. 60. It might not seem like a big deal, but the Sumerians built their entire math system around the number 60. And why should that matter to you?
Because you use their system every single day of your life. The reason we have 60 seconds and a minute, that's them. The reason there are 60 minutes and an hour, that's them too. And the 360 degrees in a circle? Yep, you guessed it. That's also from the Sumerians. Their ancient math is hardwired into our modern world. It's incredible. And they didn't stop there. They invented the wheel, first for making pottery, and then, of course, for carts. They developed the plow, which made farming way faster and more efficient. And they came up with architectural wonders like the arch and the dome, which let them build bigger and stronger structures than ever before.
So, what happened to all these brilliant ideas, all these amazing solutions? Well, they didn't just vanish when the Sumerian cities faded away. Instead, they left behind a legacy that is just immense. And that's really the most important thing to take away from all this. Their innovations, their solutions to problems, they created the fundamental blueprint for civilization itself. Later empires that came along in that region, like the Akkadians or the Babylonians, they didn't have to start from zero. They just built right on top of the foundation the Sumerians had already created. You can actually see this ripple effect moving through thousands of years of history. Around 2300 BCE, the Akkadians took over and adopted their systems. Then, around 1800 BCE, the Babylonians built upon Sumerian laws and math. And today, right now, over 5,000 years later, we are still using their ideas about time and measurement. Their solutions became our solutions.
Which brings us to a final big thought. The Sumerians faced the great problems of their time: food, water, order. And the solutions they came up with defined the next 5,000 years of human history. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the huge problems we're trying to solve today? And how will our solutions shape the world for the next 5,000 years?